You would be completely, entirely, factually wrong. This specific checking account belongs to a 32-year-old, heavily educated, intensely dedicated corporate professional who works roughly 50 to 60 hours every single week. This account belongs to someone who sacrificed their entire 20s studying late into the night under fluorescent library lights. It belongs to someone who fiercely climbed the greasy corporate ladder, who negotiated aggressively in performance reviews, who actively takes on monumental levels of soul-crushing workplace stress, and who rarely sleeps 8 unbroken hours. They did everything they were explicitly told to do, all to finally achieve the absolute ultimate, shining golden trophy of modern American capitalism. The person staring in absolute suffocating terror at the specific empty bank account makes exactly $100,000 a year. They are officially, mathematically, proudly a 6-figure earner. And they are completely, functionally, entirely broke. Welcome to the new, brutally horrifying mathematical reality of the modern Western world. Hi, my name is Bill, Dollar Bill. And before we put on our surgical gloves today, pull out the undeniably sharp scalpels and conduct a devastating, step-by-step reverse financial autopsy on the absolute death of the 6-figure dream. I want to enthusiastically welcome you to the channel. Thank you so much for choosing to actively spend your highly valuable time here with me today. Let me know directly down in the comments section exactly what city or state you are watching this investigation from. I genuinely love reading about our massive global community. And if you are entirely ready to permanently shatter the dangerous financial illusions handed down strictly by your parents, please forcefully leave a like, hit that big subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell so we can keep building undeniably real wealth together. For the last 4 decades, the entire cultural, educational, and social apparatus of the modern world has carefully programmed a singular, universally accepted magnificent finish line deeply into your subconscious mind. That specific heavily fortified finish line was achieving a gross annual income of $100,000. Our parents fiercely hammered this specific magic number aggressively into our developing brains. Television shows constantly portrayed the 6-figure earner as the ultimate, unshakable pinnacle of profound success. We watched movies in the 1990s where the character who made $100,000 drove a pristine luxury convertible to their massive suburban estate, featuring an in-ground swimming pool, casually taking 2 expensive international vacations every single summer. We collectively believed, with absolute unquestioning religious certainty, that the precise moment human resources finally sent you that specific congratulatory email, officially confirming that your base salary had finally crossed the grand 6-figure threshold, all of your worldly, earthly problems would miraculously, permanently vaporize. We foolishly believed we would instantly gain access to a secret paradise of flawless financial security. We believed we would effortlessly swipe pristine metal credit cards at incredibly expensive sushi restaurants without ever feeling a single drop of cortisol flooding our veins. We believed that making $100,000 effectively made us completely bulletproof against the brutal forces of economics. But then, an entire generation finally did everything exactly right. We sacrificed. We worked relentlessly. We actively dragged ourselves violently across that heavily marketed golden finish line. We proudly opened our glowing banking applications on our smartphones, eagerly expecting to finally see the magical paradise of limitless liquidity safely waiting there for us. Instead, we looked at the screen and we realized we were staring entirely into an incredibly deep black abyss. To permanently understand exactly how an incredibly ambitious, highly intelligent professional earning $100,000 a year can intensely panic on the 29th of the month over a devastatingly empty bank account, we cannot just actively look at their current situation. We cannot simply blame them for buying an overpriced avocado toast or subscribing to a music streaming service. Those are infantile, Deeply ignorant arguments utilized by out-of-touch commentators who do not fundamentally understand the modern macroeconomic baseline. We must forcefully grab the heavy tape of time, firmly press the reverse button, and violently rewind the timeline backwards. We must completely reconstruct the crime scene, starting entirely from the end and methodically working our way directly up to the top. We must perform absolute reverse engineering on a six-figure salary to truly locate the massive invisible leaks. Let us return directly to the scene of the financial crime. The account sits severely at $412. The first aggressive parasite, actively attempting to bleed this account utterly dry tomorrow morning, is the massive $3,000 credit card bill. Let us mathematically rewind time, peel the heavy layers completely back, and violently dump that specific $3,000 happily right back into the checking account. What the hell was fiercely on that massive credit card statement anyway? Was our six-figure earner aggressively buying luxury diamonds from high-end jewelers? Were they wildly partying on lavish private super yachts in the deep tropics? Were they engaging in wildly irresponsible, undeniably reckless behavior? No. If we aggressively read the itemized historical statement line by painful line, we firmly find the deeply terrifying, remarkably boring truth. The $3,000 is firmly composed of entirely basic, unavoidable human survival, heavily mixed with tiny, desperately sad dopamine hits. We see a massive $600 charge accumulated over 4 weeks for heavily inflated weekly groceries. Our successful professional is not buying caviar. They are simply purchasing chicken breasts, deeply overpriced fresh basic vegetables, and a box of standard laundry detergent at a local market where prices have silently escalated 30% over 3 years. We see $200 actively spent at the local pharmacy on basic vitamins and a single simple medical prescription. We intensely see an unexpected $400 emergency automotive repair, completely replacing a set of aggressively worn brake pads, because cars fundamentally decay regardless of what your job title is. And then, crucially, we see the deeply understandable psychological coping mechanisms. We see absolutely countless, seemingly meaningless $40 charges aggressively deployed entirely on digital food delivery applications late at night. Let's dissect that specific psychological choice. Our six-figure earner is not actively lazy. They just returned to their apartment at 8 o'clock at night after a 12-hour shift of fiercely, intensely managing chaotic corporate crises. Their brain is entirely fried, entirely depleted of all decision-making capabilities. The sheer thought of standing over a stove cutting onions and heavily cleaning greasy pots and pans feels like a physical impossibility. So they forcefully surrender. They spend $40 on a simple hot meal rapidly delivered to their door. It is a desperately sad indulgence. It strictly purchased the bare minimum requirement of physical convenience, entirely disguised cleverly as a functioning modern adult life. Alright, so we have magically returned all of those tiny bleeding lifestyle cuts backwards. We have returned the $3,000 back. Our bank account now sits slightly heavier at roughly $3,400. Let us continue to violently rewind the economic tape backwards. We hit the brutal mid-month auto drafts, the heavy machinery of modern transportation. Let us dramatically return the massive $700 heavy car payment, currently securely keeping a shiny mid-level, entirely unremarkable SUV firmly parked out in the driveway. Why does our earner voluntarily possess a $700 car payment? Because of the ego trap of the newly successful. When you finally break the six-figure barrier, you walk into the heavily polished luxury automotive dealership, and the sharply dressed salesman aggressively strokes your deeply frail human ego. They tell you that you are a highly successful executive now. They aggressively implying that successful executives simply do not violently drag themselves to important corporate meetings, driving an 8-year-old heavily scratched reliable sedan. You believe them. You proudly, violently, aggressively sign the heavy lease document, Because you genuinely believe you have explicitly earned the fundamental right to comfortably drive a vehicle that confidently broadcasts your new impressive socioeconomic status quietly to total strangers stuck aggressively in morning traffic alongside you. And it does not physically stop at the shiny metal object itself. Let us violently return the crippling $200 monthly comprehensive auto insurance, premium, heavily required by law to legally drive that specific highly depreciating machine on the open highways. Let us aggressively refund the painfully persistent $300 monthly federal educational student loan payment currently haunting this successful earner. The brutal irony here must be deeply violently acknowledged. This $300 required payment is violently extracted every single month strictly to pay off the massively expensive, highly prestigious university degree they explicitly needed to acquire to safely land the $100,000 job in the very first place. You are aggressively paying a massive monthly admission ticket just to successfully stay inside the heavy corporate arena. We forcefully rip these transportation and educational payments deeply out of the clutches of the predatory lenders, thoroughly shoving the capital heavily back into the green matrix of our checking account. The account balance now sits fiercely eagerly at exactly $4,600. We keep aggressively rewinding. We have securely cleared the mid-month expenses. Now we hit the absolute ultimate psychological monster. The first day of the month, the housing paradox. Let us forcefully snatch back the massive $3,200 entirely dedicated to basic human shelter. It is heavily important to permanently understand that this specific staggering amount of money is deliberately not actively paying for a massive sprawling luxury estate with an infinity pool or a custom home theater. In virtually any aggressively functional modern economic hub in America today, $3,200 strictly buys you an incredibly modest two-bedroom apartment sitting quietly in a relatively safe, established neighborhood, or it fundamentally covers the heavily inflated property taxes, the high-interest mortgage, and the basic structural insurance on an incredibly small, entirely unremarkable starter home badly requiring minor cosmetic renovations. Our six-figure earner explicitly felt deeply pressured to actively sign this specific heavy lease or firmly commit to this grueling 30-year mortgage because of severe societal expectations. When society vigorously stamps you as a successful high earner, a dark, heavy psychological burden aggressively locks onto your soul. You deeply feel you physically absolutely cannot be visibly seen, continuing to firmly reside in a dangerous, incredibly cheap rundown area with 3 chaotic roommates well into your 30s. You logically believe that making 6 figures fundamentally obligates you to finally upgrade directly into a physically safe, relatively visually quiet zip code. You want a safe place to park your car and a quiet place to sleep. And the aggressive modern real estate market completely ruthlessly punishes you precisely for that exact basic, deeply understandable human desire. So we dramatically rip the entire massive housing payment directly out from the greedy landlord's deeply grasping hands, and we violently shove it firmly back into our checking account. We have actively reached the very beginning of the month. We have utterly restored all the heavy housing, the required transportation, the educational debt, the groceries, and the basic utilities entirely back onto the ledger. The account balance powerfully sits eagerly at exactly $7,800. Here is the most devastating, truly horrifying moment of this entire autopsy. Our subject makes precisely $100,000 a year. Mathematically, if you actively take a calculator and simply divide 100,000 strictly by 12 months, their beautiful, shining monthly income should confidently equal exactly $8,333. If we have currently arrived at the very beginning of the deeply expensive month, having entirely refunded extremely everything they aggressively consumed, effectively rolling the timeline back to day zero, why do they only possess $7,800? Where is the remaining capital hiding? Why does the fundamental mathematical equation entirely break before we even start actively spending a single penny? Because we have not yet passionately accounted for the incredibly quiet, endlessly patient predator strictly standing directly at the very top of the financial hierarchy. Let us fiercely, violently rewind the financial tape all the way firmly past the exact date the paycheck officially landed safely in the checking account. Let us physically drag the heavy narrative utterly back directly into the heavily structured corporate payroll department. Let us aggressively look completely at the brutal, unrelenting, brutally sharp edge of the legendary federal tax bracket. Our deeply exhausted professional absolutely did not wildly earn $100,000. That is an enormous societal hallucination meticulously engineered explicitly for heavily padded corporate recruitment brochures. That specific six-figure number is intensely, strictly, completely fictional. It only exists visibly as gross income, which is a completely irrelevant, highly deceptive vanity metric. Before our extremely dedicated six-figure successful hero could even successfully touch a single physical penny of their own hard-earned sweaty life energy, the aggressive central government coldly forcibly reached down and vigorously harvested their mandatory massive slice. The state deliberately forcefully reached directly in and permanently extracted their non-negotiable severe percentage. The highly bloated Social Security network and mandatory Medicare system firmly deeply siphoned directly off their incredibly heavy portion, entirely known widely as payroll and FICA taxes. And because our hero is supposedly deeply financially responsible, they quietly contributed a relatively modest, heavily unexciting $400 directly into their incredibly boring 401k employer retirement plan, safely attempting desperately to secure their own distant gray future. Additionally, they were brutally systematically forced to heavily pay aggressive monthly premiums for their own severely fundamentally flawed, highly expensive health insurance simply securely existing tightly directly within the required corporate medical plan. When the brutal, completely unapologetic legal financial taxation dust officially, effectively, aggressively settles right on the bloody battlefield, an utterly terrifying, completely staggering reality explicitly, intensely, universally remains. Nearly $30,000 deeply, magically, forcefully, violently vanished utterly, permanently. Gone entirely, exclusively, strictly before the money ever officially hit the bank. Our absolute legendary, completely glorious six-figure successful champion essentially actually brought deeply, gracefully, confidently, truthfully home roughly around $70,000. When you aggressively take heavily, uniquely, exactly, precisely, strictly, completely, confidently $70,000, and you strictly, faithfully, explicitly, truthfully, mathematically divide that exact number precisely by 12 aggressive, unforgiving, brutal months, you do not fundamentally arrive at the incredibly magical, luxurious, legendary $8,000 paradise. You brutally, intensely, violently, correctly, truly, realistically arrive completely, exactly, specifically, properly, precisely at roughly $5,800. $5,800. That is their true, unadulterated, mathematical monthly reality. $5,800 of essentially deployable purchasing power. And when you drop $5,800 directly onto the viciously unforgiving modern, macroeconomic battlefield of inflated suburban housing, crippling student loans, unavoidable automotive dependency, and predatory credit trap pricing, the absolute mathematical certainty is that the supposed six-figure successful earner will be violently, entirely wiped out, completely flat by the 29th of the month. They are living an incredibly dangerous illusion. The baseline of basic human survival has fundamentally, drastically expanded over the last 20 years, but our cultural, psychological expectations are frozen deeply, helplessly inside a time capsule buried in the year 1995. You are actively running an incredibly brutal marathon, entirely expecting to be warmly handed a beautiful gold medal firmly at the glorious finish line, only to look up exhaustedly and aggressively realize that the finish line was secretly, physically moved 10 miles further, down the vicious road while you were desperately gasping for air. Making $100,000 a year absolutely means nothing anymore if you fiercely continue to play by the incredibly outdated rules. Gross income is a complete devastating myth designed to keep you happily working 50 hours a week for a corporation. The only metric that fundamentally, solidly, logically determines if you will ever become genuinely wealthy is your unadulterated free cash flow and your absolute ruthless refusal to allow the massive societal pressure of being a high earner to falsely dictate the expensive car you drive and the prestigious neighborhood you reside in. True wealth is entirely, officially, fully, specifically defined by tactical retention. A completely unimpressive factory worker, legally making $65,000 a year, who actively, forcefully, brutally, aggressively retains $15,000 in sheer unyielding profit at the end of the year, is mathematically, structurally, undeniably, incredibly richer than a massive corporate director making $150,000 who retains absolutely, entirely nothing but a bright red credit card notification on the aggressively terrifying 29th of the month. Disconnect your ego entirely from your gross salary, because the gross salary is a fiction strictly belonging to the taxman. Focus completely, aggressively, exclusively on the quiet, unsexy, remarkably powerful margin that you fiercely, forcefully keep. Thank you so much for deeply watching and actively listening today. I truly appreciate you spending your absolutely vital time aggressively dissecting this financial autopsy with me. If you are entirely ready to confidently start recruiting an army of capital, redefine your own finish line, and finally stop being robbed completely blind by the illusion of the six-figure salary, forcefully hit that like button right now, securely subscribe to the channel, and I will powerfully see you in the next video. Stay brilliant, but far more importantly, stay entirely free.